Cool. Well, yeah, thanks for having me. It's super excited to be here. I have a weird light on me that I can't seem to get off, but that's just the way it is. I'm Nathan Beckord. I run two startups. One's called Foundersuite.com. That's for startups raising capital. That's been around since 2016. So we're going on 9 years for Foundersuite, and it's software for raising capital. We've had 100,000 startups on it. 21 billion raised, so pretty exciting to see some of that. And then just about a year ago, last February, we launched Fundingstack, which is our new baby, which is a similar platform, but it's for emerging manager VCs raising a fund. It's a very similar process, different in some ways, but similar, and also for like fundraising consultants. So that's what I'm doing now. Before this, I started my career in investment banking. So I worked at Piper Jaffray and JP Morgan's private placement group, helping companies raise capital out in New York, and then moved out to California and hung out a shingle with a couple friends and started helping early stage companies raise capital. So long story short, ever since college, which was a long time ago, all I've done is help companies raise capital in different ways. So that's kind of this talk, is like all the stuff I learned. So hopefully I can give you guys some good nuggets and thoughts and processes, strategies. So that's me.
Awesome, Nathan. Well, we're super excited. Kind of the format of this is going to be a 15 to 25 minute presentation with 15 to 20 minutes Q&A at the end. So please save all of your fantastic questions after the presentation. But Nathan, I'd love to hand the mic off to you. And if you'd like to start your presentation, feel free to start.
Absolutely. And what's our hard stop, just so I am conscious of time and everything like that?
Yeah, typically around the 45-minute mark. But if the conversation keeps flowing, we can continue to have the conversation. But typically these executive workshops are minutes to an hour.
Okay. Yeah, my talk goes a little bit longer than that, but I'll kind of make it a fast version of it. So we'll do it.
And as people have questions too, it's like I said, right? If you want to ask them live, you can wait till the end. If you have something that's top of mind off something that Nathan said or a slide, definitely feel free to drop it in the chat. And that way, we can make sure we don't forget about it, or Nathan might even be able to address it, during that slide. So anything that you have, drop it in there, or we'll have some time at the end for live questions. So with that said, Nathan, feel free to share your screen and you have the floor.
All right, let's jump into this. Okay, you see my slides? We're good?
Yes, sir.
All right, I've already told you who I am, so we're not going to jump into that. I love to start off with just how not to raise capital. Hunter Walk is a seed venture firm, a seed venture capitalist out here in San Francisco, and I just love this quote: "Will you intro me to investors is too broad to be acted upon." And this is how a lot of people start fundraising, is they're just asking everyone they know for intros. That's logical, but the problem with this is it's putting the hard work of figuring out who you should be targeting on the other person, where really that's your job. So instead of doing it like this, think about fundraising as a sales process. If you've ever done sales, it follows kind of a pretty straightforward approach. You build a list of targets or leads, you qualify them, and you engage with them, and ultimately you're driving them all towards a decision, a yes or no, towards a close. We can think about it in the framework of a funnel, right? This is a sales funnel. Top of the funnel, you're building a large list of investors, screening, filtering. You're finding the right person at each fund. If you're going after venture funds, you don't just pitch a whole fund. You got to find the right partner who does your type of deal. Then where it does differ from sales is this fourth little bucket. So much of it runs on the warm intro. We'll talk about that. Those intros lead to pitch meetings. You get through your pitch meetings, you get into due diligence. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's a deep dive into your business. When I raised our seed round, I got a term sheet from a VC on a Friday, and then on Monday they sent me their due diligence list, which was 200 items they needed: articles of incorporation, Google Analytics, customer references, personal references, financials, all that stuff. You get through that, and ultimately you're selling shares of your company. So this really is just another sales process. So let's kind of take it step by step. Step one is building that top of the funnel. I always tell founders, fundraising is really a numbers game. When I raised our seed round, I pitched over 200 investors and ended up with 1 venture fund and 10 angels coming in on my deal. So if you do that math, that's about a 5% conversion rate. 5% conversion between who I pitched and who wrote me a check. You can also do the math. That means I got rejected 95% of the time. And that's actually pretty normal. So just put that in perspective. And that's another reason why you have to talk to a lot of investors. I'll go through this pretty fast. So where do you find these investors? I'll try not to make this too much of a product plug, but we do have a database of about 227,000 investors that you can search by type of investor, industry, location, and stage, or keyword. And then we show descriptions, social links. We have contact information for about 80% of it. So go in and search Foundersuite. We've got a lot of good data in there, about 130,000 angels, and the rest are venture firms, family offices, corporate VC, pretty much every type of investor. But we're not the only ones out there. Of course, Crunchbase, everyone's familiar with Crunchbase. I like to use Crunchbase a very specific way. I'll make a list of 10 companies that are similar to mine, but not directly competitive. And I will plug each one into Crunchbase to see who funded them at the stage I'm at, right? So if I was raising a Series A round, I might add expansion, venture capital, to my, and K9 Ventures to my CRM or to my pipeline. But so many places to find investors. This first bullet, these are newsletters you can subscribe to for free. I like Strictly VC. I kind of read it every day. I spend 5 minutes skimming it. And when a startup raises a new round, they'll announce it so you can see who's getting funded and who's investing in them. Also, when a new venture fund raises a new fund, or when a new venture fund launches, they'll announce it. So the best venture fund to be pitching is one that just raised a new fund because they have fresh capital to put to work. There's a life cycle of venture capital life cycle anyway. What is that all about? One sec, guys. I don't know what this is. Okay, anyway, moving on. Conferences can be an interesting place to find investor targets. Look at all the conferences in your space, even go back a couple of years, look who was speaking. Investors love to build their own brand by speaking at relevant conferences. Quora, TechCrunch, Medium, you guys all know all this stuff. But when you find an investor in Foundersuite or in Crunchbase or somewhere else, go follow them on Twitter. And Twitter often will recommend other similar profiles. Go see if they have a Medium or Substack blog and follow them or subscribe to their blog. Medium's kind of cool because I get a daily digest of suggested articles from Medium, which is more or less based on who I've followed, but it also will often recommend other investors that are similar to the ones I follow, right? So it's like this nice feed right into my inbox every morning. PitchBook and CB Insights, these are paid databases. There's others out there. There's Signal by NFX. There's tons of databases out there. Kind of depends on how much you want to spend. ChatGPT is actually pretty interesting for doing investor research. You can go in and ask some pretty specific queries. Show me build me a list of e-commerce angel investors in Los Angeles. ChatGPT will probably have some answer for that. I'd say it's good for doing kind of the top of the bell curve, but not the longer tails, right? You'll get the top 20 or whatever, but not, the other 200 or so. So it's not bulletproof, but it's pretty good. And then I'm going to show you 2 ways very quickly to tap your own personal network to build your investor list. So let me go first to LinkedIn. I do have a paid plan, but you don't have to have a paid plan. Let's say I'm raising a seed round. I'll just come up here and search on, angel investor, right? Okay, and then let's do people. So 113,000 results. That's obviously way too many. So what I want to do is apply some filters. I might do first degree just to show me who, or remind me of who I'm directly connected. But the hack here is second degree, and then, let me add, Tyga, where are you at? Where are you physically located?
So right now I'm in Valparaiso, Chile, but typically in Missoula, Montana.
Okay, Bozeman, Montana's. Well, we'll just do Bozeman anyway.
Yeah.
Chile might be too obscure, but let's say I'm based in Bozeman. Okay, so just for kicks here. Okay, well, now this only shows 20 results, but still, that's manageable, right? If I put in a different location, like Bay Area, I'd probably get 1,000 or 2. But anyway, this is telling me that in Bozeman, there are 20 people that call themselves an angel investor that I have at least one mutual connection to. So theoretically, I should be able to get in touch with any of these people because I have a mutual connection. But that doesn't mean they are all relevant for my type of business. I consider Foundersuite a kind of SaaS fintech, right? We're sort of SaaS fintech. So what I want to do next is basically right click or command click and open up. Oh, that didn't work. Let me try that again. Right click or command click and open up. I'm doing command click right now on a Mac. And I'll just open up a bunch of these folks, right? So maybe I open 10 at a time. And then I spend 30 seconds on each one. And again, I'm looking for clues. Does Greg Rogers invest in SaaS/fintech, or does he do something else? A lot of times they'll kind of say it in their about section. He doesn't say much. A lot of times they will also list it in their experience. A lot of times people will list what they've invested in. Messenger VC. Okay, so I might click through. I don't recognize these names, but I might click through and look at some of these. Sounds like he was at Techstars. He looks pretty interesting, and he was at Techstars, which has a kind of similar mission of helping startups, all that stuff. So I would probably add him to my list. Let me just look at one or two others here. Let's look at Adam really quick. All right, so he sounds a little bit more like consumer investor. Let's just skim this really quick. Let's just assume he's a consumer investor, and it looks like he only does consumer product type of deals. Boom, Command W, close it out. Look at John. He's done. So these are not the best examples. Usually you can get a little bit more of a clue of what people are doing just reading their bios. He's kind of generic in his stuff. But let me go back to the first guy. So let's assume Greg sounds pretty good. He worked at Techstars. He'll kind of get what we're doing, building our tools for startups. So I want to add him to my CRM. So I'll add Greg Rogers to my CRM. And then this next step is very important. I want to click this link and determine my best mutual connection. So who of these people do I know well enough? I know Hillary pretty well. I know Dawn. So I'm going to add Greg Rogers to my CRM and then Hillary as the connector. And I'm just putting this in my CRM or my spreadsheet, whatever I'm using. And that way, when it's time to go raise money, I know to ask Hillary for that intro, right? So that's the whole process. You can go through hundreds of these in a couple hours. Okay, so I want to show you one other thing I did to build my pipeline. I did use this is our CRM, so this is what I'm using to manage my pipeline. But you can do this with any CRM. You don't have to do it with ours. But the key here is this column. It's called Steve B Leads. So Steve Bennett is a real person. He's one of my advisors. He's a mentor. He also works at a university, and he's a fractional CFO. He's super well connected. And so I made him a column, which is over on the far right. I invited him in. And I said, hey, Steve, I'm building my investor pipeline. I know you're connected to lots of folks. I made you a column. Can you add some names to your column? And he did. He added like 10 or 12 investor names to his column. And I repeated this process with 5 or 6 other mentors and advisors and generated about 60 good warm intros by having a structured way of getting them involved in my CRM. And then just while we're here, I also asked Steve to look at my research column. Just scroll through this, Steve, right? And if you know Jason Cook, you know, do you mind just adding yourself as the connector, right? Boom. Now I know when it's time to reach out to Jason, I should ask Steve for that intro. Okay, I'm going to keep moving really fast because I have a lot to cover, but there are so many places to find investors, right? There's never an excuse to say, oh, I can't find enough investors. Once you start to kind of look, you'll start to find them all over the place. I'm going to go through this very fast, but once you've built a list of, call it 200 or 300 investors, you actually want to start removing people off the list. Going back to our sales metaphor, the best salespeople don't chase every prospect that comes in the door. They qualify them, they prioritize them, they rank them. And you want to do this. It's even more important to do this when you're raising capital. So anyone who invested in a competitor, cross them off right away. If it's a venture fund that hasn't raised a new fund in a couple of years, you might cross them off, or you know, maybe move them towards the bottom of your list, right? Because it's easy to waste a lot of time pitching venture funds that aren't actively doing new deals. Same with angel investors. If you find that guy Greg Rogers and it looks like all his deals are 5 years ago when he was still working at Techstars, you know, he might be taking a break. So again, maybe deprioritize him a little bit. Wrong sector, wrong stage, wrong geographic location. You guys know this. I don't need to tell you this, but if you're a medical devices startup, you would not be pitching a fintech investor. I see founders make this mistake all the time, though. They kind of spray and pray a little bit too much, which is very bad and will hurt you. So, you know, just what you want to get to is you're building a list of people who invest in your industry, your type of deal, your stage, your geography, right? When you do that, you'll actually get a much better hit rate than if you're, you know, kind of spraying and praying. And then I'll skip these really quickly, but ideally you want to find people who are kind of a partner level at a venture fund. If you're talking to analysts and associates, they don't really have any authority to push a deal through, but they usually do have a authority to turn down a deal or say no, right? So ideally you want, you know, partners. In general, you should kind of be removing about 25 to 30% of your starting list so that what remains is a highly focused, highly targeted list of well-qualified investors. Don't skip this step. It'll make your fundraising go much easier if you kind of achieve that. Okay, so next step, how do we get in touch with these people, right? We just built this list. We removed all the bad fits. LinkedIn is your friend here. I'm actually kind of stoked because I'll just show this really, really quick. We just launched like a week ago this this get intro function in here, which looks at your contacts, your LinkedIn, your calendar, and some other things, and it makes it finds the best connection paths to every investor. Let's say Natalie, you want to get in touch with Natalie, right? You can see who you're connected to and then, you know, ask for that intro. So very stoked about this. It's still kind of alpha beta stage. It's maybe not perfect quite yet, but you know, if you don't use that, LinkedIn is your tool here, right? Plug each investor into LinkedIn, see if you have any mutual connections. If you don't have any connections to these investors, the hack here is to look at what Tim's invested in over the last 6 months, 12 months. Cold email a couple of those founders that Tim recently invested in and just be like, hey, you know, I'm Nathan. This is what I'm making here. I saw Tim invested in your startup. I would love to buy you coffee or take you for lunch and just pick your brain for 20 minutes about what it's like working with Tim. And you build a rapport with that founder. It's okay to ask that founder for the intro. Hey, do you mind connecting me with Tim? I think he sounds like a pretty good fit for my business. And the reason this works is because Tim got to know that founder over a period of, you know, 6 months or longer, went through due diligence with that founder. Tim trusts that founder, right? There's a high level of trust there. And that founder was hustling for intros just like you're doing 6 months ago or 12 months ago. So there's founders are a great way to get intros to investors. The pay it forward, pay it back mentality, which, you know, Gildre is so great about too. So that's my best hack for getting those intros. If you don't want to do that, that takes work. There's always the cold email. I mean, we have contact information for, like I said, 80% of our 227,000. If you're going to do cold email, make every single email highly personalized while you're reaching out to that investor. Any kind of generic spray and pray will hurt you, not help. People think, oh, if I just email all 10,000 SaaS investors you have, I'll get a few bites. You don't want to do that. It'll hurt you. People will flag you. Your email will become corrupt because it's like got a low reputation. It just hurts you in so many ways. I could spend an hour talking about it. So make every cold outreach very personalized. As the phrase I like to say, show me you know me, right? Show Tim that you know him. There's a reason why you're reaching out to him specifically. And even said that your response rate on cold emails can be super, super low. So just be mindful of that. If we recap our steps, we built a list of 200 or 300 investors. We qualified it. We found our best connection paths. We want to load this all up into a CRM or a spreadsheet. I used to build these spreadsheets. The spreadsheet gets really messy after a couple of weeks. So yeah, that's one of the reasons we built our CRM, to kind of keep track of all this. But even if you don't use ours, maybe you're already a HubSpot or Salesforce user or something, just make sure you have some system in place, because you're going to be talking to a couple hundred investors. Every discussion leads to like a couple follow-up action items. You're going to be literally needing to manage thousands of activities, and you need some way of keeping track of it all. You never want to be the bottleneck in the fundraise. Fundraising runs on speed and momentum. So if things are going slow because you're not organized, it's gonna fail. So get a system in place. Hopefully it's Foundersuite. Maybe it's something else. That's okay. Make sure your pitch deck is just awesome. You know, if you ask me the top 5 reasons startups fail at fundraising, probably number 1 or 2 is their pitch sucks. You know, Gildre is a great resource, of course, for getting your pitch perfected. You know, tap your fellow founders. I always tell founders, make sure you've given your pitch at least 10 times to people who will give you honest feedback before you go talk to a real investor. And then even when you do start, you know, again, that prioritization I talked about, maybe start with your tier 3 investors, the people you don't really want to take money from, but start with them so you get some pitch practice. Don't start with your very top choice as your very first pitch, right? You've got to kind of warm up your pitch. Also really good to have a financial model, maybe a 1-pager executive summary. Okay, so we're about ready to kind of, you know, kick off our fundraise. When you're doing, I think it was step 3 of figuring out how you're connected to the investors, you might find you have a couple power connectors. Maybe it's Tyga, right? Whatever. Jeff is my power connector. He works at NASDAQ. He kind of knows everyone. And I noticed he was connected to lots of people that I wanted to get in touch with. So I put together a little email. Hey, Jeff, do you know these people? Can you make an intro? He can just go, yes, I know Tom. I know Jessica. I know Wesley. I don't know the others. He can just go, yes, no, yes, no. For everyone he says yes, I put together a new clean email thread. This is a very important slide, or very important email. It's the intro request email. And a couple things here. Notice how short it is. Another mistake I see founders make is their intro request will have, you know, 8 paragraphs of the entire company history and a 45 megabyte PowerPoint attached, and investors won't look at that. You might think you're doing them a favor by giving them more. Less is better when it comes to fundraising. So notice how short it is. Subject line is very important. Jeff, Jeff is my connector, remember. Jeff, can you introduce me to target investor name? And then what are we doing? We're raising our seed round. We had, you know, lead investor. We had 2/3 of the round committed. Of course, we didn't start with that. But whatever is your single most exciting, sexy data point, put it in your subject line, because these investors are getting hundreds of these a day. So you want them to open. You need a hook in your subject line. Okay, now the body. Good chatting with you today. I'm raising a seed round. Here's what we do. We make a investor management platform. Here's a link to our site. Then they ask, could you introduce me to target investor? Why? Because he does my type of deal, FinTech SaaS. And then I noticed this guy went to the same very tiny college in Iowa my dad went to, strong alumni. So I put that in there to personalize this a little bit. And then I include a link to our deck. And this is post it online. We have a pitch deck hosting tool in our product, but this is not my full deck. This is what I call our teaser deck. This is 5 slides: problem, solution, market, traction, team. So that's it. Problem, solution, market, traction, team. And that's enough for Clint, the investor, to look at this, see what we're doing, see what stage we're at, see who we are, see the problem and market we're going after, and he can make a decision. Oh, thanks, Jeff, but these guys are a little too early for me. I'd actually rather have him say something like that than wasting my time driving, an hour and a half down to Palo Alto to go meet with him for coffee, right? So I like to have this teaser deck as another way to qualify these investors. And then Jeff can hit forward. Hey, Clint, can I introduce you to my friend Nathan? Send. Hey, Jessica, can I introduce you to my friend Nathan? Send. I'm making it easy for my connectors to do their job. Okay, I'm going fast here, but I want to get through as much as I can here. If you haven't watched HBO Silicon Valley, go watch it. It's a few years old now, but it just captures a million little funny nuances of startup life and raising capital. It's so good. I think it should be required viewing for any startup. But it follows along. This guy in the middle here is Richard. He's the CEO of Pied Piper. Richard is an engineer. He's kind of an introvert, a nerd. And he's got to get out there and raise capital for Pied Piper. And he's got to get out there and meet all these investors who are really smart. 40% of all VCs went to Stanford or Harvard. Many have very big egos, like the guy in the upper right-hand corner. And investing is what they do. So they're professionals at this. Whereas for Richard, it's his first time, right? He's a novice. And it's very stressful. The only way to kind of overcome that is treat it like a game. And I like to say, channel your inner hustler, even if you're not a natural, hustler. And just treat it like a game and have fun with it. And you're going to learn a lot. So a couple hustle tips. One is asking for the intros all around the same time frame. We call this the Blitzkrieg approach. And what you want to do is get momentum for your deal. Investors can smell whether a deal has momentum or does not have momentum, or worse, is gotten stale. And so you want to always go in smelling like momentum. Okay, so what does that mean? Almost every time you meet with an investor, they're going to ask you something like, how's the round coming together, right? That's their way of probing. Does this thing have momentum or not? And you want to be able to answer it like, it's pretty good. We just kicked things off. We're in the Gildre program. We're using Foundersuite. We're running a pretty streamlined process for our raise. I'm aiming to close this out by early Q2, right? Don't give a hard date, just a general time frame. Aiming to close this round out by early Q2, running a pretty streamlined process. And I've got 12 meetings this week. I've got 14 lined up next week. Boom, right? That answer shows that you've got interest from other investors. You've got meetings set up. You're running a process. You're using the right tools. You've got a timeline. And so, that's their clue. Like, okay, if they want to participate, they need to kind of pay attention and march to your timeline. And of course, as you get progress, maybe you get, you can replace how many meetings you have with things like, oh, we're opening up our data room. I've got 22 investors interested in accessing our data room. That's kind of an advanced step. Or, I'm expecting 3 term sheets next week, or we just landed, 2 burbles. Whatever your signals of traction are, you want to be able to communicate that without exaggerating, without lying. Okay, your pitch should just get better and better. Bring your co-founder with you to the first couple pitch meetings, or have her off camera if it's a Zoom, just writing down every question that the investor asks, and then go back and make an appendix slide to answer that, right? So your pitch should just be getting better and better. And then 2 of my very favorite hacks of all time. One is sending a monthly company update to everyone in your pipeline. Everyone you're talking to should be getting a monthly company update. Everyone except the people who said no way in hell, don't talk to me. Everyone else should get a monthly company update. And I'll show you a little bit about that really quick. What does that look like? We call it the template for the prospective investors. And it really can be super short, right? This is a one-page little thing, just a little bit about, what you do, right? Just kind of have this static thing. This is what we do, your little elevator pitch. And then what happened last month? I don't know if you can read this, but key wins, right? What happened that's good? What is the good news? Product releases, customer stuff, revenue growth, key hires, marketing, partnership wins. You want investors to get excited from this section here, your key wins. Then put in a picture of your product, even if you're building something boring or very data center or whatever, right? Put in a picture of your product, put in your metrics, whatever those are, your key metrics. Put in a picture of your team every single time. This sounds silly, but investors invest in humans, so you want to put in a picture of your team. And then what's coming next? Again, product releases, maybe new deals, anything that's coming up like next month that you can kind of get them excited about. And then sign off. And that's all it has to be. Really, this is just a one-page simple update that you send out. And trust me, it's like marketing 101. You just need to get in their head on a regular, repetitive basis, and they're seeing your progress. They're seeing that you can execute, right? There's a great quote by Mark Suster: investors invest in lines, not dots. You're building that line when you're sending out a company update. And then last but not least, set up a data room in advance. I told you my little story about, I got a term sheet on a Monday. I got a term sheet on a Friday. On Monday, they sent me their due diligence list of 200 items, which I was not ready for. It took me almost 2 months, 2.5 months to get all my due diligence stuff together. And when that was happening, my fundraising started to slow down. And I was waking up every night at 2 a.m. with cold sweat that the deal was going to fall apart. Now, it did get done, yay, but contrast that. If I had prepared a data room in advance with all the relevant documents, and then on that Monday when they send me their due diligence list, I could just be like, hey guys, here's a link to my data room. You'll find everything you need there. Boom. What a difference that would have made. So it would have saved 2 or 3 months, would have saved, I think my hair turned gray that time. It would have saved so much anxiety and stress. And it makes me look like a pro if I have a data room already. The other reason I love to have a data room is you can use it as a catalyst to get investors to kind of show their cards. So, when you're a little bit ways into your fundraising, you can kind of reach out to everyone that's maybe in your, your pitched column, or here, let's go here. Like kind of reach out to everyone. I don't know what that is. Everyone who's, pitched or whatever, send them an email basically saying, hey, we're going to be opening up our data room February 1st through February 15th. If you're pretty seriously interested in potentially putting down a term sheet, let me know and I'll give you access to my data room, right? So you're kind of dangling the data room as a lure to get them to show their interest level in you. And you're going to get people like, sorry, but no thanks. We're going to pass on this deal. You're going to get some no's when you do that. But you're also going to really reveal who's actually interested by giving them access to your data room. And then you can track and see what they actually did in the data room, what documents they viewed, what they downloaded, all that stuff. And this is just a really simple structure: corporate docs, pitch materials, financials, 11 folders. Doesn't have to be too fancy or anything like that. Okay, we're almost done. Then I want to open up for questions. I'm going to skip some of the stuff. Just a minute or two here. You've been raising for a couple months. You're talking to lots of investors. Hopefully you're getting some really advanced level meetings, maybe some term sheets or verbal, valuation discussions, negotiation, term discussions, things like that. Now it's time to try and close the round. Every time you meet with an investor, do these first 2 steps. At the end of a meeting, before you're done, say something like, thank you so much for your time today. I would love to hear what your typical check size is, what your interest level is in Foundersuite, and what are next steps. And then just stop talking and see what they respond with. You're going to get a lot of pretty generic answers like, oh, we'll talk about it on our Monday meeting. But if you get a next step, like, let's have you come in and meet the partners, right? That's a strong buying signal. The second one here, again, before you finish the meeting with an investor, every time, just make this muscle memory. Say something like this, thank you so much for letting me share my vision. Really appreciate it. I would love to hear how you, Mrs. Investor, help your companies grow and how you would, maybe help me grow Foundersuite. And then again, stop talking and make them actually pitch you a little bit on why you should let them into your deal. And the reason this can be so crazy effective is that every investor has lost out on a competitive deal where there were more investors trying to get in than there were, seats at the cap table. So you're signaling that they might have to actually hustle and compete to get into your deal. And of course, as your momentum builds overall in your fundraise, they can smell that and they're like, I've seen investors, it's one of these funny things. You kind of know it when it happens, when the momentum shifts over into your favor, right? It's a beautiful thing. Okay. So it's going to take lots of meetings before you get that first term sheet. Once you get a first term sheet, you can use that kind of like the data room. You can use that as a catalyst to go out to everyone and say, hey, we got our first term sheet. If you're interested in putting down a term sheet, please let me know by end of the week or whatever. It can be hard to get a no. Fourth bullet here. You're going to get a lot of people give you very vague answers. I wrote a blog post one time, like 10 reasons or 10 ways investors say no without saying no. Right? Too early is a common one. We'll be cheering from the sidelines, all kinds of good stuff like that. And ghosting, in my CRM, I actually have 3 columns for no. I have hard no, right? I have no response. Those are people who ghost me. And then I have like too early. Those are people who say, I like it, but you're just too early for us. I keep the hard no's I remove from my investor update distribution list, but I keep the other 2 columns on my distribution list. I just keep them updated, even though they kind of, said no. I'm going to skip. Oh, well, I'll just go through really fast. PG's handshake deal protocol. Basically, this is Paul Graham from Y Combinator saying, you just met with an investor at coffee. They said, put me down for 50,000. Go back to your laptop afterwards and just write an email. Hey, so great to meet you. Just to confirm you're in for 50,000. Let me know. If they write back, yes, I'm in. That's pretty good. If they don't, they're still just a prospect. And then last but not least, if you're going to raise money, don't stop until the money's in your bank account. My corny dad joke. How do you know when an investor says yes? When the money hits your bank. Term sheets are not a yes. Verbal commitments are not a true yes, right? There's a lot of ways, games investors play. When the money's in your bank account is when you can take your foot off the gas pedal. Until that, you have to, full throttle, get it over the finish line, put it all in perspective. You just raised $2 million, $1 million. That's going to buy you 12 months of runway. You really need to start doing this whole process over again 6 months from now, building your target list for your Series A, reaching out to them, starting to send them your company update, and, all that stuff. So the fun never stops. I'm going to send you these slides afterwards, so you don't need to do anything with this. We do have a deal for you guys if you want to use our platform. I'll make this little pitch and then let's do Q&A. We do have a really fun podcast called How I Raised It on Spotify, iTunes, all that stuff. It's just interviews with people, how they raise capital. A lot of really interesting stuff, though. And that's it. I'd love to connect with anyone. Maybe, LinkedIn is a really good place. Maybe mention you're part of Gildre, so I know, because I get a lot of random cold stuff. So just mention you're in Gildre. That's it. Let's do Q&A.
Nathan, really appreciate it. We got our first question.
Yes.
Dwayne, and he is wondering, Dwayne Gafor, based out of Chicago, he's wondering, what are your thoughts on where to find and look up an investor's reputation?
Reputation. Oh, that's a hard one. So we're trying to build that in Foundersuite. We have a review section where people can leave like stars and comments. It's hard to get people to contribute that, so it's pretty sparse still in our database. I know like Y Combinator has something called Bookface, which is like their internal network, and it's like reviews on investors. There was something called the funded.com that launched, and they got sued so many times by investors. I think it might be down now. So it's hard. It's hard to get that. I would say, obviously tapping fellow, Gildre community members is a great place to kind of back check. And then frankly, just do your own due diligence. If you've met with an investor, they seem good, you like them, reach out to some of their portfolio founders and ask, like, ask the tough questions. Like, let's say the investor's name is Mark Andreessen. Ask that founder, like, how's Mark been when things are tough? Did you ever miss a quarter? Did you, were your revenue targets ever lower than you forecast? What was Mark's reaction during that time, right? Ask tough questions like that. So much of it is like gut. You got to rely on your gut too with investors. Like, can you see yourself working with this investor for the next several years, 8 years, 10 years? And then back check with other founders.
Awesome.
Good question though. I like that.
And then we have another, just kind of a kind request. Awful Lobby is just wondering if you can go share your screen and go back to the data room slide.
Yeah,
Awful Lobby, if you want to elaborate, kind of, if you have a question behind that, feel free to ask. All right, cool. So this is the data room slide. And I hope this is clear. And Alpha Lobby, if you want to, yeah, oh, there you are. Cool. Feel free to ask your question.
Okay, so I just saw that in this data room, you have, I think maybe, is it just a template or an actual data room used by a previous startup to raise fund?
So this is a real data room. We have a data room product. If you set up a data room, it's empty. I set up each of these folders, corporate docs, pitch material. This is kind of our template, basically. This is like, we've done a lot of research and people do their own data rooms all the time. Like there's 100 different ways to do data rooms. This is like what we found to be kind of a good minimal viable data room, so to speak. And it covers most of the things that investors are going to want to see. So corporate docs, pitch materials, financials, marketing and sales, customer details, tech, product roadmap, any IP you have, patents and stuff like that, market, competition, social media, and then team of advisors. So yeah, but people do all kinds of different things.
Awesome. So we have another question from Mike Shy, based out of Colorado. What's the reason and benefit of searching for local investors? Isn't it more valuable to just stick to industry-specific investors?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have a longer version of this, and I actually talk about geography in my longer version of this talk. So it's kind of interesting. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was raising capital, and the joke used to be that investors would invest in a bicycle ride radius of their office. And then it was like a Tesla charge radius of their office. So investors used to be very geographically focused, right? And that changed kind of as you started to see startups like, Spotify. I mean, these global startups popping up that were big winners all over the place. Investors were like, oh, I guess I can invest in. And then, of course, COVID hit and everything moved to Zoom and all the investors moved to Tahoe and founders spread all over the place. So geography kind of doesn't matter as much as it did even 5 or 10 years ago, which is good. However, some investors are still regionally focused, right? Because their LPs might be, I'll give you an example. I can't remember the name of the fund right now, but I found this one fund that was like FinTech, SaaS, SMB software investors. I'm like, these guys are perfect. Well, they were up in Seattle and their whole charter is we invest in Pacific Northwest startups. I'm down in the Bay Area, not a fit. Now, what's the advantage? Really getting to your question here. The advantage is you can meet for them for coffee and actually have a relationship. I have investors. Most of my 10 or 11 angels are in the Bay Area. I'll meet with them. We'll have rarely, but occasionally we'll throw a little dinner or, happy hour. And that's so valuable when you get everyone kind of in thinking about your business and how to help. I also have like 2 guys in Houston, 2 guys in New York, and I've never even met them, right? So it's like, they're kind of just a check. I hate to say that. I hope they're not watching this, but you know, they're kind of just a check in my business, right? So that's the advantage, right? You can actually activate and have that personal connection.
Awesome. And then we have another question from Amit Guru Prasad, based out of New York. Is there a point of patenting software? And I don't know, Amit, if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. Awesome presentation, by the way. Yeah, I'm just curious though. Like, I've been looking into like, patents and like software, and I'm not really familiar with that category. Is there a purpose of patenting software? Meaning, there's so many different ways of creating solutions that can be mimicked that would make a patent obsolete, right? In a sense.
Yeah.
So, in that regard, is there a point of even patenting a software?
It's a good question. I don't think most SaaS, most marketplace, it's pretty rare that, especially in the early stages, that software startups get patents. Where it really applies more is if you're doing, medical devices, drugs, hard tech, right? If you're doing deep tech, hard tech, you've invented a new materials or rosin or whatever, then you're going to want to patent that. So I would say it doesn't apply too much to software, more kind of physical products, biomedical, stuff like that. And frankly, I wouldn't, if you're early stage, I wouldn't waste a lot of money on that because it can get very expensive and you probably don't have much money. So
Yeah.
probably not.
Yeah, but no, actually, well, that's the field that I'm in. I'm actually in biotech, biomed, life sciences.
Okay.
So, like companies like Viva Solutions, they're based out of California. They're the league leaders in that whole category, right? I'm just curious, with a company like that, they sell cloud-based solutions to, like Pfizer and all these other companies, right? Like a cloud-based solution like that, would they patent their solution or no?
I can't comment on them specifically, but probably not, I mean, you think about, like, I can't speak to them. I can speak to us, right? We make CRM. There's 150 other CRM providers out there. Most of them are sales focused, like we can't patent our CRM. You know what I mean? There's so much prior art that wouldn't even be worth the time or effort to investigate it. You know what I'm saying? So
Got it.
kind of
Got it.
depends.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. It's a good
Awesome.
question.
So we have another question from Keen Angle, calling out of Rhode Island. He actually has a really amazing company called Story Pitch Decks. For those of you looking to refine your pitch, feel free to reach out to Keen. But he has a question. Let's say you pitch to 50 investors. Each investor gives you 10 plus points of feedback. Questions, and then you suddenly get 500 points of feedback. What's the best strategy here to avoid panic attacks and picking what to implement in your pitch?
This question, I love this question. That's so good because it's so true. You go meet with all these investors, and they're all really smart, and there's pattern recognition, right? Because they're talking to lots of startups, they've seen lots of patterns, so they're keen to give advice. And it can make your head spin, right? Totally makes your head spin around when you get, and a lot of it's conflicting advice too. Here's my advice to this. You have to kind of find your own patterns in the advice, right? You're going to get all this crazy stuff coming at you, different conflicting advice. But if you're starting to see a consistent pattern of, hey, we think your business model is, it should be usage based instead of monthly subscription based. If you're starting to hear that from like 7 out of 10 investors, okay, maybe it's start to pay attention. The rest of it, just kind of take a few notes, put it on a shelf, don't worry about it, right? But when you start to see common patterns, that's how I try and filter that, because it truly will make you go crazy if you take every bit of advice as like gospel. It's a good question.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then last two questions from Dwayne. Any advice on how to filter out people and investors who just are curious about the background of the business, or maybe they're just interested in the space, but in talks to invest in a competitor?
Yeah. Let's do that one first. That's a good one too, because it's like, I mean, okay, so I mentioned, your best fund to be pitching is one that just raised a new fund. Well, if they haven't raised a new fund, they might be doing co-invest or just investing in their winners, but they'll still take meetings with you. That can be hard to filter out because, like, they just want to stay abreast with what's going on in the industry. You know, so that's why they're meeting with you. It's like, it's hard to really figure out, are these guys seriously interested in investing, or are they just kind of keeping up to date with what's going on in my space? I think if you have the cojones, I don't know if that's the right phrase, you can if you're sort of skeptical, are these guys serious? You can be like, you know, just to confirm, are you guys actively investing, and do you have, you know, dry capital to put to work? Right? You can kind of qualify them a little bit over email, just to confirm you guys are, you know, still actively doing a lot of deals and have some capital put to work. See what they respond with. That's bold. The competitor part is really tough, because you don't know, you know, one thing I always say, go to their website, make sure they don't have a competitor. If they do, don't even talk to them, right? So just remove that from your pipeline or CRM if they already have a competitor. Now, you don't know if they're talking to another company that they might invest in. That's hard, right? It's really hard to figure out. I think as you get, you know, if you get into the data room stuff where you're sharing like more sensitive stuff, you're sharing your product roadmap and IP and things like that. That's the point where you could be like, you know, hey, Jim, before I give you access to our data room, which is pretty sensitive stuff, I would love to just understand, are you talking to any other firms in our space, right? Kind of just in a casual, non-confrontational way, you know, I would kind of do it at that data room juncture, just to confirm you're not, you know, talking to anyone else that's could be considered a competitor. Simple as that.
Awesome. Just any advice for companies who skip over the seed round by building cash flow and then looking to raise a large amount of money?
Hey, that's a great position to be in. I love this because, you know, I can't remember who said this, but like, if you come across as desperate, right? If you've got to go raise money because you're almost out of money, that's a terrible time to be. Investors can smell that desperation, and they also know if they just wait, you'll be even more desperate, and they can put forth, you know, even harsher terms or get a bigger chunk of your equity or whatever, right? So the worst time to be raising money is when you're desperate. The best time is when you don't need investors. So, you know, the advice is, hey, think of the confidence you'll have to go pitch investors when you don't need them. It's huge. And they also can read that body language, right? So yeah, go in, build up your cash flow, and then, you know, have a good story of like, hey, we're already, you know, profitable or whatever, positive cash flow, but we want to triple this, quadruple this. You know, we want to go like this to like this, right? The slope of our growth curve, you know, way steeper. And that's why we're raising money. And that's a great story to go in with. So I like that. Yeah.
All right, last couple questions. We have Safi Kadir. He raised his hand, and then Amit, you can go after that.
Yep.
Hi, my question is kind of the opposite a little bit, where we're building a hyper niche SaaS product, B2B SaaS product. And we were thinking of maybe just doing an angel round or like a friends and family, and then not trying to raise follow-up capital and not really going the whole large VC backed, you know, chasing higher and higher valuations, but sort of building what, you know, Silicon Valley might refer to as like some sort of lifestyle business where it's a profitable business. You don't really have to raise too much follow-up money. How do you find investors like that are cool with that sort of structure?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a hard one because, you know, I'm in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. I mean, most angel investors out here are bought into the Silicon Valley model of, if you're raising money from me as an angel, I'm expecting that you will go on and raise venture and multiple rounds of venture and you're going big, right? I expect that you're aiming for an IPO or big M&A exit and that you will raise money. So you're going to rule out, I mean, a lot of investors, I would be upfront with what your plans are, right? We want to raise this and then kind of bootstrap it, so to speak. I'd be upfront with that because you don't want to mislead them. You don't want to get sued 2 years down the road because you've misled your investors. But you're going to find that a lot of angels are like, you know, this isn't the the path I like to invest in. I want the startups that are going to be on the venture track after my angel round. So just go into that knowing you're going to remove a lot of people from your candidate pool. Now, having said that, if you find people that are really aligned with your mission, right? I mean, we had, oh gosh, who was it? One of our customers told me this great story where they found this amazing investor. There's some sort of Alzheimer's related drug, and the investor wrote a big check because the guy's dad had Alzheimer's, right? It was less about the financial return, more about the mission, right? So I don't know what your mission is, but maybe you find investors that are aligned with your mission. Or if you can tell a really compelling story of like, hey, we're not going to need that much money, and we can still scale this very large and build good returns pretty economically, which means you, as the angel, will have a greater exit because you'll still own 4% or whatever, right? So you might have to tell that story a little bit, which, hopefully that story's there. So hope
Yeah, that's the idea. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Awesome. So we
Cool.
got one more from Amit, and then Keen, feel free to ask your question after Amit's question.
I have a question and an interesting strategy that I think a lot of people can use. So, and I'm just curious what people think about this because it works for me. But what the question is, well, let me say the statement first. I started a consultancy, MedTech consultancy, about 2 years ago, and I picked up about 50 to 100 clients. Well, 50 clients to 100 projects, let's say, and it snowballed into an LLC. And everything I do with regulatory/quality consulting can be automated, right? And it's a disruptor. Everyone knows that people are working on this, but it's very niche, right? It's very niche because it's like medical device, medical technology, wearables, like a document acceleration, right? That's why the FDA is so slow. Well, because they can't read as fast as a computer does, right? I don't think so, but vice versa too. But the point is that I started the consultancy and then I created a service as a software platform. Not software as a service as a software, right? So pretty much I combined the consultancy, the human side, with AI chat boxes to give to my clients. So pretty much what happens is that I'm using the 80-20 rule. I'm still involved 20% of the time, but 80% of the work is done by the software. So they save money, I get more clients, I build more traction, and I'm not really desperate to raise money, but I'm just curious, right? And that's leverage. And then it's also leverage by expanding your team, I would say, by using universities who need students or interns that want to learn, but they don't have opportunities. It's so easy to hire talent these days with remote work, right? So I started working with the Northeastern University, and I had one intern last semester. I have 20 now. I just expanded my team by 20 in 2 weeks. And I don't have to pay them. You know why? I can't pay them because they get credits for that from the school. So I want to pay them, but I can't. Actually, I will lose them if I pay them. So think about it. You actually don't need to raise a lot of money at all, I would say, if you work with the right institutions, because they're getting a lot of experience. I'm giving them my time and my experience. So that's worth more than making X amount of dollars per day anyway.
Interesting. We used a lot of interns in the early days. At one point, I had an intern managing. It was like a pyramid scheme of interns. I wouldn't say the work quality was always amazing, so I don't know if I'd recommend it that much. But yeah, I've done similar strategies, right?
Yeah. I guess yeah, you're right. Obviously, you don't want to hire just like someone off the street and just start training them on med tech technologies. These people actually have experience.
Yeah.
But they're building on top of that. That's my point. So they're not starting from scratch. They are starting from experience, but they're getting more intricate experience.
You bet.
Awesome. Well, we have one last question, and I know that everyone kind of has to hop, but
yeah,
Keen just wanted, and I'll send this to Keen afterwards. He had to hop, but his question was just clarification. Why do you recommend not reaching out to VCs who have invested in a competitor, direct or indirect? And what's the biggest concern here?
Yeah, this is an easy one. They may very well send your pitch deck and other materials to the competitor. I've seen this happen so many times. Even been on the positive side of that, where we're pitching an investor, and they're like, they send us a competitor's deck, and I know they think they're being helpful to us, but it also makes you go like, holy cow, like I can't believe they just sent us the competitor's deck. You know what I mean? It happens all the time. And is that a bigger risk? I don't know. I mean, is there really anything super sensitive that your competitor is going to like steal your ideas? It depends, right? It depends on your business, but that's probably the biggest risk. So it
Awesome.
happens.
Well,
Yeah.
Nathan, we really appreciate your time today. Fantastic presentation, amazing Q&A, fantastic discussion, everybody. I really appreciate everyone who attended your time. We will send a recap and a whole the recording will be out as well as the notes, and Nathan, your presentation. So thank you guys.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it so much. Over and out. Bye.
Cheers.